afternoon everyone, and welcome back to Miss P Presents with me, Miss P. Now, last week we were looking at my top 10 novels of the 1920s, and this week of course we are moving on to the top 10 novels of the 1930s, which in my opinion is probably the greatest decade for publishing ever. So without further ado, let's get talking. First up on the list we have a fellow Miss P, Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day by Winifred Watson, published in 1938. Thank you, Geoffrey. This book is absolutely sublime. It has given me so much joy, read after read after read, and is a story that I often think of when in the midst of making a decision. The reason for this is that Miss Pettigrew encourages us to live for the moment, to live for pleasure, for ourselves, to live every day as it comes. It tells the story of one day in the life of poor, dowdy, down-on-her-luck Miss Pettigrew, a governess who is sent by mistake to the home of the unimaginably divine Delicia Lafosse at 5 Onslow Mansions. Delicia's existence is one of silk, champagne, and endless scrapes. Luckily for her, Miss Pettigrew proves to be astonishingly adept at dealing with tricky situations, and spends the day rescuing her new friend from disasters both great and small. It is so much fun, and you must read it. You must. Next up, we have Vile Bodies by Evelyn Waugh, published in 1930. This was a Kindle read. It is the story of the divinely extravagant, bright young things of the interwar period, told with all the ambiguity, insinuation and transient humour of the gossip columns which are so central to the plot.
Oh my dears, this is the most of them all.
It is mostly very funny and fun to read, with an interesting and rather explicit change of tone that occurs halfway through the novel. What starts out as being a sparklingly witty, optimistic and trivial account of this glamorous set later becomes sour and staid, causing the reader feelings of uncertainty and almost nervousness. One is not sure whether it is okay to laugh or not. One thinks, is it funny or is it terrible?
Isn't this too dull?
I've never been more bored in my life.
Waugh's semi-mythical characters are amoral, flippant, frivolous, and often unfeeling. But as readers we are drawn to them, like some sort of emotionally exhausting friend with whom you always have a great night out, but always wake up feeling sickeningly hungover, nervous, guilty, and even ashamed. That is what we feel towards the characters in Vile Bodies. We want to keep laughing and drinking and joining in, but at the back of our minds is this nagging sense that the party will soon be over forever. If you're at all interested in the bright young things and their extravagant lifestyles, then this is definitely a great read for you. Next up, we have Scoop, published in 1938. Another war, Evelyn. Another war, another satire, another excellent comedy of errors, this time poking fun at sensationalist journalism and the foreign press. The concept is a joyously familiar one to us, an unwitting innocent abroad. The bother begins when William Booth, an unassuming young nature writer, is mistakenly identified as the fashionable novelist John Booth and is subsequently dispatched to the fictional African country of Ishmaelia to write a piece about a war there, which the newspaper's owner, Lord Copper, believes will yield good copy. It's an excellent comical farce with a vivid cast of caricaturesque characters. Read it. Next up on the list we have Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons, published in 1932. This book is both hilarious and delicious. It tells the story of London-bred Flora Post, an accomplished but penniless young woman of sense and fashion who decides to visit a group of bizarre relatives living in rural Sussex.
I saw something nasty in the woodshed.
Appalled by the discovery that these people really are quite rough and uncultured, Flora takes it upon herself to bring a higher common sense to the place and its inhabitants, with gloriously funny results. This book is so delightful. It is the perfect read to cosy up to, whatever the weather. You'll be swept along with its divine eccentricities. What year is it, Joffrey? Not this year. What year is the whiskey? Next up, we have Mapp and Lucia, published in 1931. E.F. Benson's hilarious comedy of manners tells the story of rival hostesses Elizabeth Mapp and Lucia Lucas as they battle for supremacy in the idyllic village of Tilling. I once knew a rival hostess. Joffrey dealt with her. The snobbery and the pettiness demonstrated by both Mapp and Lucia is gorgeously detailed. As characters, they feel outrageously extreme, and at the same time eye-rollingly familiar. They behave all nicely, and then behind closed doors proceed to speak and act in such deviously malicious ways towards the other. Tilling provides a charming backdrop to their warfare, and the supporting characters are just as diverting as the two wannabe queen bees. It's a total must-read. The perfect book for summer in the garden, best served alongside lobster à la rhizome and a nice glass of ice-cold revenge. Actually, Joffrey, what's for dinner tonight? Leftovers. Leftovers! You can rustle up a prawn cocktail. Prawns! I said lobster! Maybe some small terrines? I'll let you think about it. Next up, we have Rebecca, the mesmerising Gothic classic from Daphne du Maurier, published in 1938. It follows an unnamed protagonist who falls for the stylish widower Mr. de Winter, whilst working as a female companion to the vulgar gossip Mrs. Van Hopper. The pair marry impetuously after just a few weeks' acquaintance, and so begins our protagonist's new life as mistress of a great estate. It's quietly creepy, with a dark sense of unease building gradually as the novel progresses. The early chapters are set against the backdrop of Monte Carlo, providing a stark contrast to the beautiful, yet gloomy and insular world of Mandalay, our protagonist's new home. The dreamy first-person narrative takes the form of a flashback, with sinister twists and the unearthing of long-buried secrets, leading to the sense that this new chapter of her life might be a nightmare instead. Next up, we have Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, published in 1934. This is, without question, an absolute classic. The setting of the Orient Express, a luxury train held up between stations due to a snowdrift, is an utterly ingenious location for a murder mystery. Christie presents us with a fabulous cast of potential suspects, from the level-headed English governess Miss Debenham to the gregarious Italian-American salesman Mr. Foscarelli. The focal character is, of course, the lovable Belgian detective Hercule Poirot, who interviews each passenger in an attempt to discover who committed the violent murder. Whodunit is anyone's guess. It's suspenseful, exciting, enthralling, definitely one of the most readable books of all time. Next up on the list we have South Riding by Winifred Holtby, published in 1936. This is the novel that Holtby is best remembered for, and with good reason, for it is absolutely wonderful. The story follows the vivacious Sarah Burton as she returns to her childhood home of South Riding in Yorkshire to work as a headmistress. Sarah is a character who is so utterly determined to live, despite having endured the loss of her fiancé in World War I. She is not the only one who has lost something, of course. The tight-knit community there is still shadowed by grief and depression, both economic and emotional. It's a moving and powerful portrait of rural life in the interwar period, with the independent-minded Sarah acting as a breath of fresh air, feared and resisted by many of the local townspeople who wish to remain set in their ways. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm a big fan of Holtby and definitely read this one. Next up we have The Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield, published in 1930. This is another portrait of the politics of provincial life in the 1930s. Our narrator is, like Du Maurier's, another unnamed protagonist. This time we have a self-effacing housewife who regales us with tales of her daily misfortune in a manner that is so amusing and so engaging that after just a few pages she already feels like a friend. The style is unpretentious. Delafield uses a lot of short sentences and asides, and the dialogue witty and astute. It's so very readable, so very relatable. The tedium of domestic life must ring true to us all in some way. Our provincial lady stops in the middle of sentences to write memos and queries, and is often distracted by observations and interruptions. The light-hearted tone of her narration will have you smiling from ear to ear. You'll be cheering her on through every new day and through every new disaster. Last, but by no means least, we have Good Morning Midnight by Jean Rhys, published in 1939. This novel is heartbreakingly beautiful and will stay with you long after you finish reading it. We are introduced to the novel's protagonist, Sasha, as she plans her evening from a Paris hotel room. Just one page in, we witness her crying over a brandy and soda, telling a stranger that it was because of something she remembered. What that is, we don't yet know. The vulnerability and the openness of Sasha will pierce through your heart, with the mystery of her existence and her past life haunting every page. It's absolutely beautiful. Jean Rhys is an absolute goddess. Please read it if you can. That was Miss P's Top 10 Novels of the 1930s. Join me next week where I'll be discussing my top novels of the 1940s. You won't want to miss it. Joffrey, how's dinner coming along? Joffrey? Sometimes he likes to go for a little drive in the evening. Sure he'll be back soon. I don't even know how to turn this off. Thank you so much for watching my channel. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so you can keep up to date with all things Miss P presents. See you next time.